What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTP Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. If you want to stay up to the Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. Now, in this video, obviously, it's some unfortunate news for the Baltimore Ravens as Lamar Jackson is out this weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which basically is meaning that he's out for the season. Because Tyler Huntley is going to be starting, and obviously we all know the situation that the Ravens need to make it to the playoffs. If the Ravens make the playoffs, Lamar Jackson obviously could come back and play in the postseason. So, it's potential. But the Ravens first have to beat the Steelers with Tyler Huntley. Obviously, the Jaguars have to beat the Colts, and then obviously the Raiders need to beat the Chargers. And the possibility with Lamar as the starter, I think, was a lot higher of winning than Tyler Huntley. I'm not saying it's impossible for Tyler Huntley. I like Tyler Huntley. I believe he still has a chance at winning this football game. But even if he wins the game, the Ravens still only have about I would say maybe a 8% chance of making the playoffs if they actually beat the Steelers. That's what I would think. Because the Raiders, I think, I don't think the Raiders are even favored to beat the Chargers. And then obviously the Colts are favored by about 15 points to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's still a chance, like I said. But Lamar's season is done, at least statistically, for the regular season. So when you're looking at his career stats and things like that, this is the end of it. So I kind of want to go over that, analyze it, and then talk a little bit about what this means for the Ravens. So let me know what you guys think about, Lamar Jackson's season and things like that. I will probably make a much bigger video analyzing it. But this is just kind of like quick thoughts about it. So Lamar Jackson's final stats, 12 games played, 7-5 record, completion percentage at 64.4%, 2,882 yards, 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a longest pass of 49 yards. His yards per attempt was 7.5. His yards per game was about 240. And his quarterback rating was a 50.3, but his passer rating was an 87. And if you didn't know, quarterback rating average is a 50. So it was still above average, even though 50.3 sounds really bad. Still was above average. But, the big number that I want to focus on really quickly is the amount of times that he was sacked. He was sacked 38 times. In 2020, last season, he played in 15 games. So he played in more games, and he was only sacked 29 times. 23 times his MVP year, 16 times his rookie year. Sack percentage at 9%, much higher than the 7.2% of last year. And that, I think, is the real issue. That was the Baltimore Ravens offense this year, was the sacks. And when you're getting sacked and you're missing a lot of weapons, it makes it much more difficult to win. And, we saw that with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's completion percentage was the same as it was last year. He threw for more yards than he did last year. He threw for 60 more yards per game nearly than he did last season. Like, that shows the jump that Ravens fans were looking for. And I think I see so many people coming out and saying, like, Lamar didn't play well this season. He hasn't been a good thrower of the football. And I think that that's coming from people that weren't watching the games. Because even though the Ravens were losing, and statistically Lamar Jackson wasn't having the best season of his career, he had the best passing season of his career. He just had to do literally everything. The Ravens didn't have running backs this year. Now, granted, I think Devontae Freeman stepped up. Latavius Murray did okay. But the running game was nowhere near what it used to be. It had to be Lamar running and throwing. He had to do it all. And there were a lot of injuries. Rashad Bateman missed time. And, Sammy Watkins missed some time. Hollywood missed some time. Lamar Jackson, that didn't faze him. He was still making plays with whoever he could get out on the field and throwing for the most yards he's ever thrown for in his career. The deep ball with Hollywood was looking amazing. He obviously had those comeback wins, most notably against the Indianapolis Colts. I think that was his best game of the season, was that comeback win against the Colts, but then also the Kansas City Chiefs game. Great comeback in that game. And I think it just goes to show that, like, even though he got better, people are still going to, drag him through the mud, because the Ravens most likely aren't going to make the playoffs, and he's probably going to be blamed for that. But people need to recognize when Lamar Jackson went down, the Ravens were the number 1 seed in the AFC. They were 8-3. 8-3. I feel like that's a pretty good spot. The Ravens right now still only have 8 wins. So I think that just shows like how quickly they forget. All of a sudden, the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, even though it was a bad roster, they were still winning because that's what Lamar Jackson does. There are players that people will still defend to this day that were terrible at the quarterback position. Terrible. I'm going to bring his name up. His name's Tim Tebow. Still gets brought up today because people talk about him. Tim Tebow, obviously quarterback for the Broncos, was not good. He could not throw. And I'm not making the comparison to Tim Tebow and Lamar Jackson whatsoever. I'm just saying the way that people talk about Tim Tebow is very different than they talk about Lamar Jackson, because people will go out there. I know Skip Bayless does this, and he'll go out there and he'll talk about Tebow. And he was like, yeah, but Tebow was good. He was a winner. He won games. That's what he was able to do. He was a winner, even though he sucked. Lamar Jackson goes out there, and Lamar Jackson, if not anything, he's a winner. He wins games. Most wins by a quarterback under the age of 25 in NFL history. And he missed a lot of those games, either because he missed games because he rested because the Ravens already locked up the 1 seed. He obviously missed games because of COVID issues. He's missed games because of injury at the end of this season. Happy birthday to Lamar Jackson as well. Just turned 25, so won't be able to increase that lead, but he wins. And not only does he wins by also being wildly efficient and by putting the team entirely on his back. It's very different from Tim Tebow, where Tim Tebow had a great defense. He also had Demaryius Thomas. He also had Emmanuel Sanders. He also had, I believe he had Julius Thomas as well back then. He also had, good running game. Like, he had everything, right? So yeah, he won, but it was like, yeah, he was just kind of there and everyone else won. With the Ravens, everyone else is kind of just there and Lamar's winning. That's the difference. That's why Josh Johnson and Tyler Huntley aren't winning. It's not because they're bad. They're good players. They both played well. But the level that you have to play to win with the roster that the Ravens have right now is you have to play like you're a top 5, top 3 quarterback. And I said this throughout the year. Like, when the Ravens win, it's because Lamar Jackson has to play like he's the best quarterback in the NFL. We saw that against the Chiefs. We saw that against the Colts. And we saw games where he played all right, like where he played like a decent game for Lamar Jackson. But he wasn't able to win because you have to play that well with the team that the Ravens have. You just got to be that good. Lamar Jackson is that good, and I think he showed that he's that good. So him being out, it does suck, but it is a rivalry game. Hopefully the Ravens are able to make it close. Hopefully the Ravens are able to pull out the win. But, Lamar Jackson out for most likely the entire season. Obviously, he's out for the rest of the regular season, it being only 1 more week. But let me know what you guys think about Tyler Huntley starting. Were you hopeful Lamar would play? I wasn't thinking he would. John Harbaugh's comments, obviously, this week were not super positive and hopeful. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content, and I'll see all of you again tomorrow.